Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. First, I want to start by showing you a little background on the company, and then we're going to get into talking about our new campus project. And so, with that, here we go. What you just saw was a life saving moment. That was a suicidal man in Florida struggling with mental health issues, holding a gun to his own head. Officers convinced him to point the gun away just for a moment, just long enough to deploy a Taser 10, which disarmed the man and saved his life. That scene was recorded on an Axon body camera. We are a company that saves lives and changes the world. This idea started back in 1993, at my parents' dining room table in Scottsdale, Arizona. And in this image you see here, this is me, a lot younger, holding our first ever product at our first ever public demonstration. We're proud to be born and built here in Arizona. And of course, we've grown. We started in a garage, and now we have a high-tech headquarters in Scottsdale, which is a key factor in attracting talent. We're a NASDAQ 100 company, and our headquarters has been a unique and creative workspace. But candidly, we've outgrown it. We just don't fit here anymore. And so today, I want to share with you our plans for our new Axon campus. We purchased 77 acres just down the street from our current headquarters to build something remarkable. So let me show you some views of our new headquarters. And as you can tell, yes, it draws inspiration from science fiction. It is resembling a giant star cruiser. Now, you might guess, if you know public companies, my CFO and board of directors looked at this and they said, wow, can't we build something more generic in case we ever need to sell it? And my response is, well, look, if we're going to do this, let's build something unique with real impact. This is a landmark. It's designed to inspire, but it's also a huge investment and a long-term commitment. We cannot move. There is no market to sell star cruisers in the desert. Once we build this, we are committed to Scottsdale for the next 50 years. So for this to succeed, it needs to fulfill two critical purposes. One is hosting events with our customers. We attract law enforcement from around the world and attracting top talent. We are a tech company, and our most valuable asset is our people. So on our plan, next to our headquarters, we plan for hotels, apartments, and condominiums. These are key, especially for our younger employees who are just starting their careers at Axon. At the center is a walkable promenade with 7 restaurants, 2 hotels, and a vibrant entertainment district open to the entire community. It's not just for Axon. In fact, this whole project isn't just about Axon, it's about our home state and the belief that Arizona is a premier location for businesses to grow and succeed on the global stage. It's a huge investment we'll be making in Scottsdale, and it will create up to 5,000 high-paying tech jobs here in Arizona. Now, we already are one of the highest paying companies in Arizona. Our average Arizona salary is more than double the state's average take-home pay. But look at that last line. Our tech jobs that are primarily located in Seattle, Washington, average over $300,000 per year. That's 6 times the Arizona average. And these are the types of jobs I want to bring to Scottsdale with this campus. Now, look, for senior people later in their career, Scottsdale offers great housing options. But the majority of our recruiting pipeline and talent are the youth, people early in their careers. Now, it's maybe a bit cliche to say that the youth are our future, but that's true for our families, it's true for our communities, and it's true for our company. And so the mass of our recruiting is really recruiting people at the beginning of their careers. Every major tech company, and we now compete with these guys, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Oracle, Meta. They've all built dynamic, appealing campuses. This is how we compete for the best people. This campus is critical to attracting world-class talent at the beginning of their careers. But rather than me talk about it, I want to let you hear from one of them. So I want to introduce you to a guy who's currently serving as my executive aide, Kalu J. Varney. Kalu, say hi to everybody.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you. Like Rick said, I'm definitely one of the younger faces at the company. I've been working at Axon for just about 7 months now, having graduated with a computer science degree in May of last year. Um, and honestly, it, I just wanted to kind of share my perspective around a lot of these things and why I feel pretty strongly that the headquarters should be here. Now, firstly, moving to Scottsdale for me was something of a leap of faith. I know, having lived here now, that is very much not the case. But at school, it wasn't a place where kids in tech jobs normally go, and it's not something where anyone I knew lived at. I didn't know anything about the place, and was honestly, I wouldn't say scary, but it was a nerve-wracking experience to have to go somewhere completely new, somewhere out of the norm. Now, the move too was pretty intense. I was living in Boston, so moving cross country is something which is pretty crazy to figure out. But on top of that, I think because Scottsdale is not as well known, there's not a lot of knowledge around apartments in Scottsdale, around how to get set up in Scottsdale, and just how to like set yourself up for success. I spent weeks trolling the web trying to find the right apartments, trying to figure out where I should live, because the overwhelming sentiment that I would hear was if you live in the wrong place, you can really be quite isolated from your peers. Additionally, fresh out of college, coming to Scottsdale meant I had to buy a car. Now, that was not something in my financial planning and was definitely, kind of a fork in the road. And unfortunately, these kind of changed the mind of someone very close to me at school. A teammate of mine also got the job here at Axon, but opted not to take it, not for the vision, not for the company, but because of the move to Scottsdale, what that meant, kind of the unease of it compared to the ease of going to one of the known tech hubs, and then having to do things such as figure out moving across the country, figure out buying a car, all of those steps of life where normally post college you feel a little bit supported was not, there is the support, but it's a little bit more scary to find. Now, coming from a college campus, when I was moving here, there were two very important things for me when I was trying to find somewhere to live, and that's walkability and access to my peers. Now, I think both of these are pretty difficult topics in Scottsdale. And obviously, when I started looking, I wanted to live in North Scottsdale, be close to the office. I don't like to commute. But having spoken to peers of mine at Axon a couple years above me, a lot of them actually moved from North Scottsdale back to Old Town Scottsdale, where I live now, just because of how isolationary it is. A lot of the apartments just sit off of a road, and you really can't walk anywhere. You have to get in your car to do anything. And on top of that, because of these factors, a lot of the people of my age group kind of coalesce down in Old Town Scottsdale, meaning if you're living up in North Scottsdale, you're either making 30-minute trips every time you want to see your friends, or you're not seeing your friends. Now, I know Killen Commons is an option up in North Scottsdale. I looked around it a lot, and I think it does solve a lot of those pain points. But when I was doing my research and I was on the apartment hunt, most of the apartments around Killen Commons are probably double the price of what they would cost, like the equivalent would cost in Old Town. I was seeing apartments quoted at $6,500 a month for a two-bedroom, and that, fresh out of college, that is just not possible. So very quickly, the options that kind of fit my criteria priced me out. And this is where I think our campus would have such a massive difference. I think the ability to kind of socialize, to mingle, to walk around without the need for cars is so huge. And it's one of the factors that I like about Old Town is that I can leave my apartment, I can walk to a restaurant, I can walk to my friends. It's super easy, it's pretty. And I didn't feel like I had that option in North Scottsdale. But with the Axon campus, I can leave my apartment, I can walk to work, I can walk to a restaurant, I can go see my friends without having to get in my car. And that's really what we want to be able to do. You know, cars cars are fun, but you have to park them and you have to figure out everything out around them. And it kind of dampens your ability to see people when you can't just organically happen from a walk. Just walking along the street, you bump into someone and you have a Pretty awesome, genuine conversation. Um, and honestly, I think like all of these factors, we don't want to live so far from the office. All driving 30 minutes each way to work every day. I know I came from Boston. Traffic's pretty bad elsewhere too, but that's not a first choice option. I to lose an hour every day, but at the moment it is our only real option. North Scottsdale is just not the right place for younger members, fresh out of college yet. And I really think that the Axon campus can, plant the flag for that to begin. So hopefully my perspective, helped give a little bit of an idea of, where the other young Axon employees are coming from and what it looks like for us.
All right. Thanks, Clue. Appreciate it. And again, if you heard that, one of his teammates, he rode crew in college. We made an offer to that person too, and we lost him because they were like, I can go to one of these other tech hubs and I don't have to get a car and figure all this stuff out. Now, look, when I turned 16, I couldn't wait to get a car. I have a daughter about Kalu's age, and it's the same thing. This next generation, they're more environmentally focused. Um, they typically want to be more communal, and they're less about, suburban living is just not super attractive for them. And so that's really important for us. If we're going to make a huge investment, we've got to know we've got every arrow in our quiver for recruiting. All right. Thanks, Kalu. Now, this program works. Um, I want to show you one shining example that I'm really proud of. Josh Isner is the president of our company today. He runs Axon, all of it. All of our daily operations report to him. That allows me to focus on being out with our customers and working with our engineers on creating truly innovative breakthrough products. Josh Isner started his career in the same rotational leadership development program as Kalu back in 2008. This was his first job. And he's grown up through the company, and he's a shining example of how successful this program can be. Now, this campus will also have a huge impact on Arizona. An independent analysis found that our new campus will generate nearly $40 billion in economic impact over the next decade. Again, I remember when I couldn't pay the light bills in the late 90s. It is just amazing that we're having this impact. We could create over 20,000 jobs, including both jobs at the company and at our suppliers and indirect jobs, generating $13 billion in labor income and $2.3 billion in tax revenue. So we've worked on this project. I have been working on this campus for nearly a decade, including 3 years of working through zoning approvals with the city, the planning commission. It was a grueling process. But then last fall, I think in November, we finally secured approval from the city council. Now, aside from this picture demonstrating that I have no future in modeling, so I hope the CEO gig works out for me, something else happened unexpectedly after that city council approval. So shortly after our approval, petitioners appeared, and we were noticing. Look, we were paying attention to this. Many of them were from out of state, and so we did some digging, and we found that a California union called Unite Here was behind this. And so our legal team got on a call with them, and they made this demand. They wanted us to sign a neutrality agreement that would facilitate them unionizing on our property. And so we asked, well, what do we get in return? They said, well, nothing. But, they intimated that bad things might happen to our project if we didn't sign this agreement. Now, they also demanded that disputes would be settled through binding arbitration in California under their arbitrator. Of course, we refused. This was crazy. Like, they want us to agree to unionize. They won't even admit that it was their people that were doing these petitions. It was just weird and frankly kind of icky. Now, coincidentally, just weeks before that, I was in Boston, Massachusetts, at a conference, and my hotel was being picketed. And it was by the same Unite Here union. Drums, horns, like all hours of the day and night. I was like, how can you people go back to work after this? It was terrible. And all I could think was, I don't want that on my property. Do we want that in Scottsdale? So after we declined, look, Scottsdale was flooded with aggressive petitioners. Scottsdale PD was overwhelmed with trespassing calls. We saw lots of out of state plates. Like one man was even arrested. He had an outstanding warrant. Now, at the end of all this, um, a local guy named Bob Littlefield, who I've never met, he's the guy here dressed in Santa Claus. He delivered a gift to these union backers. He delivered over 20,000 signatures to the city to put our zoning on hold and force a referendum 2 years out in 2026. After 10 years of working on this, the whole project is at risk. Now, Mr. Littlefield claimed that worker power and Unite Here. By the way, apparently Unite Here is the union. Worker Power is their like political wing. He claims they weren't involved, although he did admit that they agreed not to have competing petitions. They'd work on it together. And on the same day that he submitted those petitions, Worker Power puts out this press release. And not only did they, frankly, brag that they had delivered the signatures against us, but they also had run the campaign that drove the coyotes out of Arizona. So I'm asking myself, well, my goodness, like, why would a union be so aggressive? And what I've learned is, look, Arizona is a right to work state. You can't force people into unions. But with these aggressive tactics, they can use backdoor tactics like this to leverage employers, to force us to allow them to unionize. So this isn't just about Axon. They're doing this to multiple projects right now. Another major sports team, same problem right now. There's other big developments happening in the valley that are under the same challenge. And I think they've realized if they kill a few major developments like the Coyotes, and if they kill Axon, the next CEO who's in my position is going to cave in. I mean, heck, if I knew they'd successfully killed my project, maybe I would have caved in. But that's not right. Now, let's get into the details. Bob Littlefield, and Taze, his sarcastically named effort to kill our project, they submitted their financial disclosures, and there were some very interesting facts. First, of the signatures gathered, only 7% came from volunteers. And look, I bet some of those volunteers are listening tonight. And I'm not saying that there aren't some legitimate people who have some concerns about this, but that was a small percentage of the people that were out gathering signatures. This 7%, I agree, they came from Scottsdale and they opposed this project. But the remaining 93% were collected by paid workers. These people were paid by the signatures, essentially making them bounty hunters for signatures. Now, here's where it gets interesting. 2/3 of these paid gatherers came from out of state. These people don't even live, not just in Scottsdale, they didn't live in Arizona. Somebody was busing in labor to kill our project. Now, let me show you the final piece of the puzzle. And by the way, these numbers I'm showing you are right from Taze's financial disclosures. If you look further at their funding, you'll see this. So, if you look at where the funding came from, there was an agreement with Worker Power, which provided 5% of the funding through labor. That's the part marked in red. The rest is what I think we'd all call dark money, funds that were funneled through nonprofits, so that you couldn't see where the money was coming from. Now let's look at this. Almost 90% were contributions in the form of donated labor. Now 6% came in cash, but remember, 2/3 of these workers were from out of state, and 90% of the dark money was paying labor. Now ask yourself, who do we know from out of state that has labor resources they could deploy here? To me, it's pretty clear. This is Worker Power. It's their same people coming in from California to frankly kill my project. Now, one more thing. I've heard some city officials that everyone wants to know the true source of this dark money, and nobody knows. However, one city official did tell me, hey, it's not just the labor union. There's another significant source. A Scottsdale real estate developer provided the money to pay some of these out-of-state union folks. Now, does that make this situation any less concerning? Like, not in my view. Why would a real estate developer want to kill the zoning on our campus? Well, as Kalu just told us, we know that apartment prices in Scottsdale are sky high. Seems kind of reasonable to me that maybe this person is somebody in the apartment business who doesn't want competition. Why else would they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to kill my project? This is likely someone who benefits from keeping prices inflated. Ick. That's gross, right? Is that a valid reason to block this project? If anything, it makes this entire situation even more unpalatable. Now, let's put things into perspective. If our zoning is revoked, the land reverts to industrial use. This isn't going to be a botanical garden or something else. It goes back to industrial. And I think it's important that everybody understands what that really means. Industrial means industrial. There won't be restaurants, a dog park, a running track. It will not attract high-paying jobs. In fact, the most likely outcome is that this will be developed into a shipping and fulfillment center. excuse me, with semi trucks coming and going at all hours of the day and night. Let's be realistic. You can't turn off those safety beepers on these trucks. So when they go in reverse, you're going to hear noise pollution all night. Now, this outcome would be far worse for the community. And look, I don't control the zoning laws. Like, don't blame me. If our zoning is overturned, this is the alternative that it is zoned for. Now, if our zoning is blocked, this is likely what's going to happen. And it's not a place I'd imagine any of our neighbors would want to visit. Now, some argue that this issue is simply about not wanting apartments, but that completely misrepresents our plan. This is not just about apartments, it's about an integrated campus. Apartments, hotels, restaurants, and condos are all part of a cohesive ecosystem designed to support the workforce and attract top talent. Next time, we want Kalu's friend to accept our offer because we make it competitive to what they can see in other cities. And by the way, look, guys, I can't build half the campus. It'd be like building a house without a kitchen and a garage. It just doesn't work. We can't build a tech campus without the critical infrastructure we need for recruitment, events, and long term success. I am working as hard as I can to save this project and keep it here in Arizona. Now, we have a solution that can fix this problem, both for Axon and for the state of Arizona, to stop these special interest actions that can hold big economic projects hostage. Arizona legislators have proposed Senate Bill 1352, and this would prevent zoning referendums from being weaponized. All right, so what does SB 1352 do? Well, it would reclassify zoning cases like this as an administrative action rather than a legislative action. Now, that might sound a little technical, so let me explain what that means. When a city council changes the laws, that is a legislative act. If they create some new penalty for a new crime or some other law, that's a legislative act and it goes to referendum. But when they perform administrative functions like approving contracts, making payments, or frankly, in most states, zoning changes, those actions are treated as administrative. And the distinction is crucial because it empowers elected officials to do their jobs without the constant threat of referendums being weaponized. Now, let me uh, let me share with you, this is not unique. In fact, Arizona is on the wrong side of this curve. So as you see in this chart, and by the way, Kalu helped me pull this together. Good job, man. Doing the research on this. But look, 31 states explicitly prohibit referendums on zoning, including Florida, which is experiencing significant economic growth. And a few years ago, Florida passed a law to prevent exactly this kind of problem we're facing now. The same issue that drove the coyotes out of Arizona and can put every major economic deal at risk. Now, in some states, they allow referendums on zoning in special circumstances. Those are the gray states, but the vast majority of states does not allow this practice. Only 9 states explicitly allow referendums on zoning. And let's look at those states and figure, do we want to be like them? These are places like California, where businesses are fleeing and special interests dominate policy decisions. That is not a sustainable economic crossroads. I don't know about you. I moved to Arizona. I don't want to live in California. I would rather be much more like Florida and Texas and other states that are really friendly to business. Look, Arizona is at a crossroads. We can choose to follow business friendly states like Florida or go down the path of excessive regulation and special interest control like they do in California. Now, let's talk about how referendums get weaponized. What do I mean by that? Because at first blush, you'd say, well, look, referendums are great. Let the people decide. But in reality, special interests weaponize these. It is exceedingly rare that a grassroots community movement goes out and does a referendum on their own. Nearly every case is fueled by special interests. Let me show you. Let's look at some past examples. Tempe Marketplace versus the Mesa Riverview. Developers used a referendum to block competition. Chevron versus Quick Trip, same thing. One company funded a referendum to stop a competing business. The Tempe Coyotes challenge. Remember, worker power played a major role in forcing a pro sports team out of Arizona. Glendale, it's the same playbook. So right now, this major project, worker power is behind the petition efforts to block that development, just as they're doing to us. Now, look, there have been rare cases where a referendum was truly grassroots, such as a hospital project in Flagstaff. But let's look at that. Even in that case, part of the issue is communities need hospitals, and every project has to go somewhere. This is why we elect officials to make the hard decisions and do the job. We've all heard the phrase, not in my backyard, but at some point it's got to go in somebody's backyard. And so the reality is that most zoning referendums are driven either by special interests using them for anti competitive reasons or unions like they did to us trying to gain a foothold in the state. That is not the intent of direct democracy. And it's why 31 other states prohibit this kind of referendum abuse. And we have some brave legislators that have introduced a bill to change Arizona to be more like the pro business states. So bringing it back to our case, and for those of you on this call, look, I also want to say I recognize some of you may have been volunteers and you were personally, passionately on this project. And I acknowledge that. But let's be clear the bulk of the referendum effort was fueled by a combination of union money and a real estate investor. I'll let you draw your own conclusion on that person's motivations. So, Arizona is at a critical fork in the road today. We get to choose Arizona's future. There are two possible outcomes. Scenario one, if our campus zoning is revoked and it's overturned, we will have no choice but to sell the land and move out of Arizona. And Arizona will lose 40 billion in economic impact. Now, I also want to be clear. Some people have said that Rick is threatening this. This is not my decision. I'm the CEO. I work for the board of directors. You all may have heard of cases where boards of directors fire CEOs. And I work for the board. And I am the only full-time Arizona resident on our board of directors. And they have made this determination. They've said, look, we've been at this for over a decade. We've got to bring this to conclusion. And I will tell you, I am the strongest advocate for keeping this project here in Arizona. But the rest of the board, look, they're watching the news and what they're seeing isn't pretty. There's been a lot of name calling. Some public officials have been very openly hostile to us. Now, I want to also be fair. The majority of public officials, I've been down in the Capitol, they want us to stay. But those voices never make the headlines. The ones that do make it to the news make it seem like Arizona is a place that's pretty hostile to companies like ours. And that's what my board is seeing. So I'm doing everything in my power to keep this here. But the board set a hard deadline. They made it clear if this isn't resolved by summer, they've directed management to sell the land and just move to a jurisdiction with more business predictability. And as you can imagine, our business, we have a lot of inbound traffic. We have every city and state in the country wants businesses like Axon, and it would break my heart. So let's be real. If we sell, the land is going to become a fulfillment center. There's frankly a big need for new shipping centers in Arizona. If we leave, this backdoor unionization effort will accelerate. So look, whether you involve this or not, what the rest of the business community is going to see is that you better sign these unionization deals. I believed we could push back and win, and we didn't. Others will see the writing on the wall. If you want to get a project approved in Arizona, you have to bend to the unions. And this referendum is a backdoor way to force unionization and, frankly, a lot of the regulatory muck that comes with it. I think we should recognize that Arizona is on the verge of a much broader wave of unionization. Do we want to go the way of California or not? And beyond that, look, if we leave, Arizona is going to struggle to attract new businesses. If a homegrown success story like Axon is forced out of our own state by special interests, what tech company would choose to move here? Like, consider what's already happened. We lost a professional sports team, the Coyotes. We lost Anduril, a major defense tech company. They were evaluating Arizona and Ohio, and we lost. If we can't keep the companies that were founded here, how do we expect to attract new ones? Now, let's turn to a little more optimism. Scenario two. If our zoning is retained, well, first of all, if we stop the weaponization of these referendums, Arizona will gain its first true tech campus. Look, there is nothing like what I want to build here in Arizona. We'll retain 40 billion in economic impact and jobs. And the community is going to benefit from vastly improved traffic flow, a walkable restaurant district, and a pro-business environment that attracts innovation. With clearer, more predictable business climate, Arizona will be open for business, and we will attract so much talent. And I will be the greatest salesperson you will ever meet for the state of Arizona. In fact, we're already seeing this. One of our virtual reality partners out of Poland opened an office in Arizona because of us. They wanted to put teams close to us as one of their customers. If we stay, more of our partners and our suppliers will also relocate here. So before we go to Q&A, I want to be direct. Do we want to have a high-tech jobs and a vibrant economy? Or are we going to block workforce housing, choke off new talent, and frankly turn Arizona into a retirement community? If we don't create housing for early career professionals like Kalu, startups aren't going to flourish here. Tech companies won't come here. And over time, our tax revenues and long term economic health will suffer. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not against retirees. I'm getting up in age myself. I turned 55 this year and I'm going to get my ARPA card. Um, but one of the things I love about Scottsdale is that this is a thriving, multi generational city. I could take my 82-year-old father out to dinner and see a mix of generations, middle aged professionals, young adults building their careers, and everybody fit in. That's what I love about the vibrancy of Scottsdale. Now, for a short time during the pandemic, I moved to Sarasota, Florida. And honestly, one of the things that made me want to move back to Scottsdale is Sarasota. I've seen what that looks like. When you become a retirement community, you can feel the difference. You can feel it's a city whose best days are behind it. I want a city where my kids want to come and start their career and raise their kids and my grandchildren and have a vibrant community. Like, I don't want a future where Arizona decays. And we must keep attracting young talent because it's not just a cliche. The youth are our future. And now, with that, let's move to questions and answers.